Adam, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm interested in what your experience was like writing at Earthly. So I know when you joined, Earthly was only about four people, and very quickly, Earthly's articles started getting on the front page of Hacker News, and you were the author of most of those articles. And so within Earthly, did you have to campaign to like get have the time to write those articles and invest in things that would do well in Hacker News, or did that come from within Earthly?
I was a backend engineer who got a job at Earthly in developer relations. Didn't really know what that was, but figured I'd be talking at a bunch of meetups. Um, I tried talking at meetups and it didn't go super well. So I started. We had an investor who's Mitch Weiner, who was the marketer behind DigitalOcean, and he was like,
Mm,
"Yeah, just like write things about the problems that your potential customer has, and like." Try to just really solve the problem and not necessarily be um, marketing, I guess, which is a weird thing for
yeah,
a marketing expert to say.
right.
But that led to the writing, and then yeah, and then some of them were a bit more silly and did well on Hacker News, and then I took your course,
Yeah,
and then kind of leaned into that,
yeah.
and so I don't know. I think because it saw results um, pretty quickly, and people will get excited when their company's on Hacker News. So it wasn't too hard
Right,
to make the case that this was valuable.
right. Were there any false starts, or did it pretty quickly get traction on Hacker News?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I wrote things that were more directly about like, here's why you should be using Earthly, and like, we made tutorials and example apps, and lots of things like that. And I don't know if our goal with those was to really have them do well on Hacker News necessarily, but I would like share them on Twitter or we would post them on Reddit. Anyways, none of that ever worked, I guess, like
Yeah,
directly. Uh, I mean, it was useful for people who were using Earthly and wanted to know, like, oh, how would I combine a JavaScript solution with a Golang solution? Like, well, here's an
mm,
example. But like,
yeah,
it wasn't like our problem was people didn't know who we were, right? We were
right.
competing with obscurity, and
Yeah,
so yeah. I mean, I think one of the big things was that in your course you were like, oh yeah, sometimes like this blog post, I worked for 40 hours on this, and I was just
yeah.
like, wow. It's like, okay, so like I'm nowhere near like where this needs to be,
Oh,
to
okay.
be this valuable.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's what a lot of people miss is like you can write, you can spend like 2 or 3 hours on a bunch of blog posts, and they all kind of flop, and you're like, oh, like blogging just doesn't work. And it's just like it's hard to realize that like it would work if you put more time into it, or like I mean, it doesn't always have to be 40 hours, obviously, but like I think there's kind of like a power law distribution where like getting to the Hacker News on the front page at all is like orders of magnitude more readers than like just missing the front page. And same thing with like first page of Google results, and like being number one versus being like number 10. And so yeah, like I think it's hard to like will yourself to do that, but then like the payoff once you're at that level, it like ends up being much higher. Like every incremental hour you put in, like once you're close to like a high quality post, it's like you're getting paid off much higher.
I mean, the power law thing is hard to internalize because yeah, like it's really, we made hundreds of blog posts over time at Earthly, and I'm sure that the top 10 of them are responsible for the lion's share
Yeah,
of people knowing things, which is wild to think about, right?
yeah. Do you remember like the first big success on Hacker News at Earthly and what the reaction was?
Um, so like I could have it wrong, but I wrote this post that was, I think it was called like YAML and other stupid programming languages,
Uh,
and like it was kind of relating to Earthly because there's all these build solutions where you write all this YAML and you're basically like programming but in YAML.
yeah,
Um, but the funny thing was that uh, the title, like people don't necessarily read the things you write, right? And so
yeah,
as soon as I posted this, there was just like a million comments that were like, YAML's not a programming language, right?
right,
And so and then other people would chime in and be like, well, actually, no, like if you read this, he's saying something more complex. And
right.
it took off just because of like it was basically a reading comprehension test that I had posted, and everybody was failing it, right?
Right.
Um, yeah, but then after that happened, we had somebody message us, who was interested in Earthly, who had found that blog post, and then they were like, "Oh, what's this?"
Yeah.
And they were a pretty big company, and so we were like,
Yeah.
"Hey, this is a thing." It's hard to think of a less like business oriented thing than just like writing an angry rant about
Right.
YAML, but like it was bringing business to us.
Right. And so how did you decide like what topics were going to match the kind of customers? Like was there strategy in figuring out like, okay, somebody who would agree with us about how annoying YAML is somebody who like would like using our product? Like how did you figure out from the topics like what would attract customers that matched you?
Like it's easiest to write, especially if you're writing something that is like explanatory. It's easiest if you don't know it well, right? And like
Mm, yeah.
you're kind of teaching yourself as you go.
Right.
Um, like in Earthly, you had to do a lot of things like using Bash and using the shell and like
Hmm.
gluing together these tools. And it's not like I spent a long time as like a Unix system administrator. So like
Right.
I knew like the awk was a thing, but I didn't understand what it was.
Yeah.
Except people said it was useful. So I'm like, okay, let's explain that. So that was certainly helpful to like scratch. Like if there's something you don't understand, and especially if there's something you don't understand that you have to use, and you're pretty sure nobody else really has mastered it either. Like,
Right.
yeah, it's great.
Yeah, I think that's often a good source for ideas. It's like you learn something like you tried to find resources on it and you couldn't. And so you can just be like, okay, what's the resource that I wished that I found 20 hours of tearing my hair out ago?
Yeah,
Were there topics where you tried to post attacker news or like topics that didn't even get to the point of publication?
yeah. I mean, there's lots of things that we like posted to Hacker News and didn't really take off. One of the key things I learned was just to get a lot of feedback and spend a lot of time
Mm,
editing,
yeah.
right? And so I would write things, like okay, that snarky thing about YAML was funny, so
Yeah.
I tried to write an article where it was like, um, what's the word I want? Like it was funny by me being like directly straight about I'm gonna solve this problem to this solution, and then the way I built it was just using like complicated YAML on top of YAML and like templating YAML,
Right.
and like I shared it internally, and I built some horrible tool, and like
Uh-huh.
nobody really got that it was a joke. They were just like kind
Uh-huh.
of confused about what I was building, and I was like, okay, well I don't think this works. Like whatever, the sarcasm is not coming through.
Right.
Yeah. So there was lots of that, like getting feedback and
Yeah.
seeing what people thought.
Yeah. What was the feedback process like within Earthly?
Yeah, well, I would just write something and then either I would write it directly in Markdown, like in our static site generator, on like a PR branch, and then the CI would make like a preview URL and Netlify, and I would share that and get feedback that way. Like I would just message a couple people and they would provide feedback, or like it was actually easier to get feedback if it was like a Google Doc because people could
Mm,
just leave comments.
yeah.
But I couldn't always like the formatting was sometimes an issue with like, oh, I
Right.
want to show code stuff, and then people don't
Right.
understand it.
Yeah.
But the thing that I found very valuable was like I was always asking people for feedback, and then the harder part was I would always try to take action on their feedback because I think
Hmm.
there's like a maybe it's just me, but like somebody's like, oh, like I didn't like this part, and you're like, well, no, but that part's good or whatever. And so I always had to remind myself, like, you know, if I'm asking for somebody's feedback, like I should actually be taking action upon it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that was hard because like oftentimes I just didn't agree, or it's hard to get out of your own head sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's a hard balance because sometimes I guess it's like knowing your reviewer because I think sometimes people give notes just for the sake of like they wanted to give a note and like they maybe haven't really thought through the advice. And so like sometimes you do have to reject the note and just be like, "Hey, I think you're the weirdo and like this actually is good." But I think if you're doing that too much then like if you're just rejecting everybody's notes and saying like no everything I write is gold, then you probably also have a problem. So I think it's yeah, it is something that's difficult to learn like which feedback to take and which feedback to like when you have to be kind of confident in your own instincts.
Hmm. I know, like Michael Lewis was saying that like he gets a lot of feedback, and that he, trying to think how he phrased it, that like they're always right about something that they point out, but they're usually wrong about what's actually the problem. They're like,
Yeah.
so like he takes it as like there's a problem here, but like the person might say like, oh, you should do it this way, and like he ignores that,
Right.
right? He's the writer, he knows what he's doing,
Right.
but yeah, like something drew their attention.
Yeah. Yeah, I have that a lot with Grammarly, where like Grammarly will flag something for me and be like, "You should write it like this." I'm like, that sounds stupid, but like the fact that you flagged it is making me take a second look, and like usually I'm like, "Yeah, that's not the best way to phrase it."
Yeah, no, I've had that for sure.
Are there any tools for writing that you found useful?
Yeah, so I did use Grammarly. I had like a chat GPT prompt I would use
Hmm.
somewhere. I found it pretty helpful for editing. So there's that book. I mean, it's possible I heard about it from you, but it's like On Writing Well by,
Oh yeah,
yeah, William
Zisner, I
Zinsner.
think.
Yeah. And so he has like a lot of things about just removing unnecessary words or overly complex words, right? So I
Yeah,
have a prompt that's something like, hey, pretend you're him, go through this sentence by sentence and make me a list of all the words that are unnecessarily complex, or, the sentences that could be simplified. And
yeah,
I found ChatGPT is actually pretty good at that, right? Like it's like providing specific editing advice.
yeah,
Um, but yeah, you also have to ignore it, like just like we were discussing. Like sometimes it will be
yeah.
like, no, you should say it this way, and yeah,
Right. That's
yeah.
interesting. And do you have any rituals around writing itself? Is it like you have like a specific hour of the day when you write, or you do certain things to put yourself in the mindset for writing?
I think my main ritual would be I have like YouTube music on my phone, and I'll like plug these headphones into that and put on something that's like instrumental, because
Mm,
like the words distract me. Um, yeah, that's the main thing. Like I didn't have too many rituals around it, but I mean, I hear that's very important for some people.
yeah. Did you find interruptions from coworkers would interrupt flow? Like if you would get an email or get an IM?
Um, I don't know. Like I could just ignore those. Like I
Yeah.
dealing with my own interruptions, I guess, was more of a struggle. So internally driven, like I feel like there's this thing where you're trying to figure out a way to say this thing, and then you're like, oh, I should go grab a coffee or something.
Right.
It's like I hit a hard spot, and my body promised me like maybe you should do something else. Like, what
Right.
have you checked the mail? And it's yeah. So I think those are more of a struggle for me.
Yeah, mine is like I always have the intense desire to clean my keyboard when I'm trying to write something hard. I'm like, it's really important that my keyboard be really clean right now. Have you found any techniques to overcome that?
uh, no, but like I forget where I heard it, where somebody was saying that basically, yeah, it's like if you hit a certain level of like mental difficulty, like it can prompt you to be like, oh, I should do this other thing, which seems more immediately rewarding. I think
Yeah,
once I had that idea that like, oh, it's not actually about checking the mail, it's that this is hard and I need to just think about this. That was helpful.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I
I
mean,
think awareness is really helpful too. Just like knowing that that's happening and knowing like maybe this I don't really need to check the mail. Maybe that's not really the most important thing right now. I just feel that way because I'm doing something hard. And I think you can train yourself to get more comfortable with thinking hard, especially for writing.
yeah. Yeah, and editing is it's harder and it's easier. Like in some ways I find it takes less concentration, but in other ways it's very boring. Like it can be like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like do you find the first draft more fun than the edit? Like what's your favorite part of the writing process?
Yeah, I mean I think the people telling me that it's awesome.
Yeah, that's the same for me.
everything between. No, I mean yeah, the initial ideas are pretty fun, and
Yeah.
titles are super fun.
Oh, really?
Um yeah,
Oh, I get stuck on titles.
like I always feel like no matter how much time I spend like coming up with a title, like it feels like you could do more. Like it's actually so
Mm,
important. Especially when we're
yeah.
talking about on Hacker News, like it's all people see is like this
Yeah.
little title. And yeah.
Yeah, I was curious about like one of my favorite titles of yours was Green versus Brown Programming Languages. And I
Mm,
feel like it's such a catchy title and it's so evocative, like even before reading it. And you have that graphic, right, as you right before you even get into the text of like a brown field and a green field. And it's like, oh yeah, like this, like even before you even get into it, it's like I know kind of what this is about, like older programming languages versus newer ones. And I feel like that kind of phrase is just sticks in my head. Like, do you have a does that just come to you, or like do you spend a lot of time thinking of like, oh, what's the it's not exactly like a soundbite, but like I think certain authors are really good at like introducing a phrase into the lexicon. Like,
yeah.
do you have a process for that, or do you just kind of like get lucky and be like, oh yeah, that one really works?
No, but I think it's important. But I don't know that. Yeah, I mean, I don't know where that one specifically came from. But yeah, like there's two things that work there, right? Like one is, yeah, I think that if you can like put together a concept and explain it to somebody, especially if maybe they didn't see it before but it was there, like that's very powerful, right?
Yeah,
If there's like, oh, here's this thing, maybe you didn't notice, but here's this thing,
yeah,
super powerful, and then you give it a name, right? And it kind of holds together. And like if you do it really well, like it can become like the canon. Like I feel like there's like canonical things covering topics, and if
yeah,
you are able to like coin a phrase and it becomes something that's used like that, like you're now part of the canon of whatever software
yeah,
development. Or yeah, I don't know if I've succeeded at that, but
yeah.
I've made attempts. Yeah, and then the other one is like I love when a nonfiction book, because I like to read a lot of nonfiction books, but I love it when they can give you a title that like once you've read it, you're like, oh, that the title is actually the summary. And I think
Ah,
like Joel Spolsky had his hiring book called like Smart and Gets Things Done. Like that was a
yeah,
great example, right? It's like
yeah.
that you could read the entire book or you could understand these are his
Right,
criteria. Yeah.
right. Yeah, I love Joel Spolsky, and he's one of the first people I think of as somebody who's really good at coining phrases like that just
Yeah.
always stick with you. Um, I was also interested in the article "When to Use Bazel," and that did really well on Hacker News, and it was a pretty atypical article as far as what succeeds on Hacker News. You interviewed 7 different experts about Bazel, which is like a system for building complex mono repos. It was derived from Google's. I mean, obviously you know this, but it was derived from Google's internal Blaze system. And Earthly is in some ways a competitor to that. What was the like process of interviewing those people and putting together the article?
Yeah. So I posted on Twitter that I was looking for people who had done migrations that I wanted to talk to them. And then like I had like a Calendly link, and then I just interviewed them. I have experience interviewing people for my podcast, and yeah, and then actually writing it took me a lot of time because yeah, like I couldn't figure out how to structure it all, and so I ended up like printing out transcripts of everybody and like circling sections and then grouping.
Oh
Like it
wow,
became very complex, and then I
yeah.
kind of threw that away, and I was just like, well, what's the most interesting and important things people said, and grabbing them here and there.
I'm just imagining you like in a serial killer, one of like
Yeah,
or a
yeah,
detective has like red string.
yeah. No, it got a little wild, but it turns out it's actually better to just read through and find the most interesting parts that people say,
Hmm.
and then just throw those all in like a markdown file, and then start. Okay, how can I make this into something people would read?
But it was like kind of the themes appeared to you as you read them.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. I think that one reason it did well is that it is a high effort, and it's apparent that it's high effort.
yeah,
And I think another reason it did well is because it contained people's stories about like software migrations, right? Like
yeah,
taking down their CI and moving to this new system and having it take a long time. And yeah, like people really like stories, but also the stories don't exist out there in the world. Like there's a
yeah.
lot online about build systems, about Blaze, about Bazel. You'll be hard pressed to find somebody saying like, "Hey, we did this and it took us 3 years and it worked in the end, but like at what cost?" Or
Right.
whatever the story is, right? It was awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, you'll see like random comments on Reddit or Hacker News of like, oh, we used Basil and it was terrible. But you're not really getting the context. Like, I think the thing that's really interesting about your article is just like you're setting up who these people are, and it's like they're very credible. Like, a lot of these people contribute to Basil, and they have a lot of hands-on experience. They work at these like very well known companies, and so there's like a lot of context behind their opinion, and it's not just like a throwaway comment. It's like these people have like clearly spent a lot of time thinking about the technology and like what went well and what didn't.
Yeah. And it's also like the reason I like read Hacker News a lot is oftentimes for these comments. Like somebody's like, "Oh, there's a new
Yeah.
Kafka feature launching," and then there's somebody in the comment who's like writes 2 pages about this
Right.
3 year Kafka migration, and you're like, "I want to know more." Like, I don't know
Right.
what happened at this place, or yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But what do you think the incentive was for the people who you interviewed? Like, why did they want to talk to you?
So when I started podcasting, I did like guest interviews for this Software Engineering Daily podcast, and then I was like going to start my own podcast because he was like, "I'm the host. I don't know why I need you," but I was like, "Okay, well, I'm going to do it on my own." And he's like, "Yeah, go for it." I was like, "But how do I convince people to like talk to me?"
uh,
He's like, "Oh, people just like to talk about themselves."
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think that's a really good lesson. And especially knowing that, like, not only that you're just going to talk to them, but you're going to do something useful with the result. It's not
yeah,
like you're going to hear their story and just like write it in your journal. It's like you're going to feature them and make them look pretty good too, as like setting them up as this expert in this technology.
yeah. A lot of people don't know actually. Journalists will often like audition people, right?
Mm,
So they will reach out to say a whole bunch of people who want to talk about a certain topic and say, "Hey, I'm writing about whatever Biden's mental
yeah.
health. What are your thoughts?" They may talk to lots of people and throw most of them away because there's that one really interesting person who has an
Mm,
interesting perspective on it.
yeah.
Um, I've never gotten good at that, but
Yeah.
I think it just shows that you shouldn't be afraid to reach out to people and see what they have to say.
Yeah. The other thing I thought was interesting about that post was that when I read it, I was like, oh, this is interesting that they're writing about a competing product and it's not in bad faith. Like, you see a lot of companies that say like, "Oh, hey, we have product X. We took a look at our competitors," or like, "We make calendar software and we rank the best 5 calendar software. And wow, we're number one." And like all of our
Yeah.
compliments to our competitors are like kind of backhanded compliments. And I thought it was interesting that like when you wrote about Basil, it felt very fair and even-handed. Like, was there a concern at Earthly that you would make it look too good, or like how did you come up with the tone of like presenting Basil in a positive light?
It wasn't hard, but I think it just speaks to being small and like our communication strategy or something. I don't know. I think that like the longer time a place is around and the more insular it is, like you can be like, "Oh, our product is the best," and like there's kind of an internal, uh, everybody ignoring other things. But
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like because I kind of got to set the direction on what our communication strategy was, and I felt like it was really good because I remember Gavin, who was marketing, he had written this thing for this feature that we were building. It was like self-hosted platform, right? And in it, he was like, "Hey, here's the thing. Like at home, I have like this Windows server that I like stream things from and whatever, and I have some like open source software that I run on it, and I'm never going to pay for any of it because it's just like my home thing.
Mhm.
But I work at a tech company, and if they want to know like what's a great thing for streaming this, then um, I already have experience with this." And he
Yeah.
was like, and so hence our strategy, right? Here, this is
Right.
you can use it free for home use. And like the secret that usually nobody says is like, we're just hoping that you work somewhere and eventually they'll adopt this. And like, I thought,
Yeah.
like, yeah, okay. We have this strategy of just like, let's speak directly to the person about like, like everybody knows this, right? When we're giving away a free product, like we're hoping that there's some, way that it gets adopted, but
Yeah.
nobody's saying it.
Yeah, and Basil is like that's a really interesting strategy because like Basil is so complex that like nobody's using that for their home server. Like,
Yeah,
but
that's true.
somebody might use Earthly for their home server.
Yeah.
And so like if you can get them to pay attention to Earthly, like yeah, there's a lot more people with home servers than there are like making product strategy decisions for like companies that are at the scale where they would need Bazel. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I just meant like we weren't afraid to talk about competitors
yeah,
or about like what our, go to market strategy is for pricing or like we
yeah,
were, yeah.
yeah. I think that was something in my business as well. Like I feel like people in general are very cagey about details, and I feel like you gain so much more by being open. Like people trust you a lot more, and they feel like they can relate to you a lot more if you're just like open and honest about like here's when you would use our product. Like here are the scenarios where you would use our product, and here are the scenarios where a competitor would be better. Like it doesn't have to be. I think people are so used to seeing the way like giant megacorps compete with each other, where like Google is never going to say, "Oh, like here's some situations where you would use an iPhone instead of us." Like it's
Yeah.
just,
It's
but
funny, right? Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
like
you are really good at it, right? Like you are like constantly open about what's going on, like the sale of your business and
yeah.
uh yeah,
Oh,
no,
thank
that's
you.
huge value.
Coming back to just like blogging in general, are there any like turning points in your blogging career that influenced the way that you write or the topics that you write about?
Yeah, so there's this Austin Kleon book about writing. I forget what it's called. Maybe Show Your Work or something like that. Anyways, it's super good. But like the thing he always said was, or maybe he had also one about like artist steel or something. Anyways, that you should find things you like and like try to make your own version of that.
Mm,
So I think that I found that very powerful, right? Like I don't have to invent a new style of communicating, right? If there's just things that I find speak to me, like maybe I should try to adapt that style. I found that
mm,
very powerful. Yeah, I learned through the podcast that yeah, people's stories like have a lot of resonance. Like, this happened, then this happened, then this happened. Like I think whenever like you give somebody like an objective and then things get in their way, people pay attention, right?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I learned from you to just put a lot of work into the content. Um, yeah, those are some of the big lessons that come to mind.
Were there things that you learned to avoid doing?
Yeah, I wrote an article once about wanting people in Zoom meetings to like have their cameras on,
Hmm.
uh, and like it did take off, but like just everybody saying how stupid it was and how like why just because my employer pays me, why do they have the right to see into my home? Or
Yeah,
I like it really generated a negative reaction. And then I learned that like, I guess like the tone of my thing was like a bit like shaking my finger, like what,
right.
like, yeah. So I learned that that wasn't a great idea. Yeah. I learned that tutorials, don't really work for that type of viral content, but they can be very powerful um, just for like Google searches.
But going back to the webcam one, I think that's an interesting lesson because that's something I've found as well that like there's certain kinds of posts that can get a reaction, but maybe it's not the reaction you want. Like maybe
Yeah.
like it becomes popular and you just like don't really feel good. I've had posts like that where it's like the reaction is very combative and like I wrote this article that was critical of Stripe, and I showed how their library was like kind of doing more tracking than they let on. And the reaction on Hacker News is like one of the most negative reactions I've gotten, where everybody's like, "You're an idiot! Like you don't understand! Like Stripe is doing that for good reasons because they're doing fraud protection." And I was like, I know why they're doing it. I just still don't like that they're doing it. But it was just like it was such a different experience from like something like, "Oh, I sold my company," and it was like, "Yay, great! You sold your
Yeah.
company." And it does inform like I do think it's important to like call out bad behavior, or like if you have a strong opinion on something, like I think it is really useful to do it, but like no going into it like this is going to be a fight, and like are you ready, like are you going to feel good if this turns into a big fight?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's true. That one surprises me that there was a negative reaction on like because usually, yeah, like big company doing something bad seems like it would succeed.
Hacker News loves Stripe. I think it's because the founders are so active. But do you have any like for people getting started with their blog, like what advice would you give them?
Yeah, so make a list of like writing that you like. We had like a channel at Earthly called like Great Writing or something, and we would just post them here and there. Um, and then just try to do it yourself, right? And it's actually a really good way to get that initial ramp up to see like what it takes to be at that level is to be like,
Yeah.
I really like this piece, and now I'm going to write something like it. And when I finish, let's
Hmm.
go back and compare and see like, okay, well maybe what I have isn't quite there. That can be
Yeah.
a way like you're almost getting a feedback loop, but internally generated by just comparing yourself to an external source.
Do you remember examples of articles you've done that with?
Yeah, so uh, there's this article that's called like a brief and incorrect history of programming languages, and it's like, yeah, it's hilarious. It's just like made up stories about programming languages. I think it
Mm,
has the years right, but like the backstory is just humorous, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and then so I wrote something called like mostly incorrect DevOps glossary, because there's just all these DevOps terms like cloud engineering and
Yeah.
whatever, and I just made them all up, right?
Right.
Like a cloud engineer is just a developer who writes Go, or
Yeah.
yeah, like whatever. And so yeah, it was like, can I make something as funny as this, history example?
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a really interesting technique. I've never tried that, but I see how that would be a good exercise.
yeah. And so also there's that um, works for Fly, used to work for Tailscale. That Z, uh, she writes with like narrative bubbles, like her
Oh,
text
yeah.
goes. Yeah, yeah. So I tried to imitate that once when I was writing an internal engineering thing. Like I interviewed the two of the engineers that worked on it and kind of interspersed their dialogue with me, like describing the feature. So that was
Yeah.
me trying to copy her. Yeah, I think that it's a powerful technique, right? And you
Yeah.
can take inspiration from more than one place, right? If
Yeah,
you
definitely.
if you copy one post, people might be like, "Oh, that's like that." But if you take
Right.
inspiration from two, they're like, "Oh my god, it's something new we've never heard
Right.
of before."
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful thing. Like I think people really underestimate the value of being good at coalescing information. Like I don't think I'm especially good at coming up with original ideas, but I think I'm pretty good at coalescing the good parts of a few different sources. And yeah, like that often gets a good response because it's like, oh, you saved us the trouble of like scouring the internet and finding these three good ideas, and you put the good parts in one place.
Yeah, totally. And you have your cartoons. Like I think those are solid, right?
Oh
And it's
yeah, yeah. It's like a yeah, like I think like really lots of things where it feels like a signature move that you do. I think will help you stand out.
yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for talking, Adam. So you host the podcast Co-Recursive, which I really like. I've been listening to a lot the past week, but I've been listening for years. Adam's website is adamgordonbell.com, and he's on Twitter at Adam Gordon Bell. Is there any other places people should find you?
No, that's probably it. But yeah, write things. It's fun. Like I
Yeah.
think you'll enjoy it.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Adam.
That's my advice to
All
people.
right.
Yeah.
Good stuff.